Now, tell me a little bit about your career working for the CDC back in 1984. What made you? How did you decide that you wanted to go into the CDC?
You know, prior to working for the California Department of Corrections, I was the executive director and founder of a rehabilitation program, a Christian rehabilitation program in San Isidro by the name of New Life Apostolic Outreach. And that program still exists today. So from the age of 18 years old, I founded that program in San Isidro. And by the time in 1984, I was 24 years old. I started with one man, a young, older gentleman by the name of Daniel Aro, which was a hardcore gang member, drug addict from Otay, a gang leader. He was the first man to go through my program. By the time I left the rehabilitation program in 1984, I had 36 men from different state prisons. We had them from San Quentin, from Tehachapi, from Folsom, from San Quentin, like I said, from different Tracy, different state prisons. So it was there that talking to these inmates for 6 years, giving 6 years of my life, helping these individuals, that I decided to take the next step to go into law enforcement. And I started my law enforcement career at CMC, California Men's Colony, which is at that time was a protective custody institution.
What year did CMC? Now CMC is in San Luis Obispo, right?
That's correct, California
And
Men's Colony.
what year did that become a protective custody prison? You talking about all the yards there too?
All the yards. One of the, I think yard one was, or yard four, I mean, it's been so long, was a psychiatric yard. All the other 3 yards, they were all protective custody. We had Craig Pyer, the CHP gentleman that was convicted of murder. We had ex-police officers, a lot of police officers. We had the Manson killers there, other than Charles Manson. We had Tex Watson. We had child molesters. We had a lot of dropouts from the Nuestra Familia, Black Guerrilla family, Mexican Mafia, and Aryan Brotherhood. A lot of dropouts from the Mongols, Hells Angels. Everybody that was a dropout, they were in my 3 yards, which was yard 2, 3, and I think 4 was psychiatric, but 1, 2, and 3 were all PC yards, protective custody.
And how many PC yards do you think existed between 84 and 88 when you worked for the CDC?
You know, I think every institution, I don't think they had, I think CMC was the only yard, to be honest with you. If somebody debriefed, they would send them to the hole, and then from the hole, they would send them to CMC. I don't remember, I mean, back in 88, I mean, I don't remember any other institution having a PC yard, protective custody yard, like we had at San Luis Obispo. I think San Luis Obispo was probably the only one. After they debriefed, for example, it was a Mexican Mafia gang member, he would debrief at San Quentin, and from right there, he'd be in the hole. And once he went to classification, they would send him to CMC at that time.
Because today, from as I understand it, I think 50% of the prison yards in the CDC are now protective custody.
They probably are. I mean, I haven't done that research. I mean, there's no need for me to look into it, but I'm sure if I did, I'd probably say it'd probably be a little bit more, to be honest with you.
What are some of the toughest prisons or the toughest prison yards that you've actually witnessed as a correctional officer?
Well, I mean, I had the opportunity at the beginning of my career to go to Tracy State Prison. I got a chance to go to Folsom at the time. I got a chance to go to San Quentin State Prison, and also to Soledad to interview people, or for a job interview. Because when I went to Soledad, I was there for 1 day, but I also took a tour of the joint. I met with their gang security squad. And the reason why I was there at that time was because I was taking the bilingual test, and that's the only place that they would offer it at the time. The other institutions, I toured them. I got a chance to walk and talk to the security squad, to their gang investigators, because once I came over to San Diego PD, I was part of the prison gang task force for several years. So we would have monthly meetings at different locations throughout the state. And while we were there, we would go to the institutions either to talk to inmates, or we would go to the institutions to talk to back then, they were gang investigators.
Now, the prison gangs back then, when you were in the CDC in 84, 85, they didn't seem as strong or as powerful as they ended up becoming in later years. Was that the case?
No, they were just as powerful back then as they are today. There's nothing has changed. The only thing that has changed, a lot of individuals have debriefed. A lot of individuals have dropped out. Back then, they were very strong. I mean, they were recruiting. They were using the Southerners, the Northerns. The NF was using the Northerners. I mean, everything you see today, we had it back then, other than the disruptive groups. I mean, we didn't have what was it, the Bulldogs. We didn't have them in 88, 84 when I was working there. And I also, when Donovan first opened up back in 87, I was part of the activation team. I was actually the officer that received the first inmate, literally the first inmate that arrived at Donovan. I was working R&R, and my job back then was, as soon as they would come in, we take them in. We didn't have R&R back then at Donovan. We had to use Building 3, which is the hold today. That was our receiving and release. And I was the one, like you see that movie American Me, where you tell everybody strip down, put your arms up, open your mouth. I was that guy doing that for about a year and a half there at Donovan.
What's it like when a prison is brand new, when inmates are actually opening up a prison? What is that scene like?
Well, I mean, it's very hectic. I mean, it's very chaotic. Because I mean, we every day we would have to go on the yard with metal detectors, because the construction workers, for whatever reason, left nails. They left little pieces of tube of rebar. So I mean, there was those yards. Even though prior to opening the prison, the security squad had gone throughout the yards with metal detectors, we would still find. One of the things that I was very well, I guess I specialized in was working informants. So even back then, working R&R, I had numerous informants. So they would actually come in and request to speak to me, and they'd bring me a piece of rebar. They'd bring me some nails that the inmates found. So I think that security was one of the most volatile situations a correctional officer in a new prison is faced with when it first opens, because there's weapons everywhere.
Now, you said working informants. It seems today that there are so many high-ranking criminals that have become informants, that have turned to snitches. In the 1980s, was it more difficult and rare to get a powerful guy to inform or flip, as they say?
You know, Alonso or Alex, everybody talks. I don't care who they are. Everybody talks under the right circumstances. And there's probably going to be people watching your show. They're going to say, I'll never talk. He's the first to talk. He's the first to talk. You know, everybody talks under the right circumstances. And, you know, one of the things that I believe in, that whether you call it destiny, I call it God today. But back then, I just called it luck back then. Under the right circumstances, everybody talks.
But it seems like it is a big deal when you get a bona fide Mexican mafia guy to drop out, because it doesn't happen every day.
Well, of course not. I mean, how can it happen every day? You only have maybe 100, if you're maybe 100 or less bona fide members in the Mexican mafia. I mean, you're looking at 365 days a year. I mean, there's not enough days to have these guys drop out. With time, everybody talks, man. That's all I could tell you. And okay, I learned that in the 5 years or 4.5 years that I was working CDC, and I learned it in 27 years with the San Diego Police Department. And I learned it after I retired from the police department. I became a PI. I opened up a company in Mexico, and even in Mexico, the cartel guys, the politicians, everybody talks under the right circumstances.
Thanks for watching StreetTV.net. If you're not subscribed, please hit that button below and click the bell to receive alerts and notifications. Feel free to comment below so you can give us your feedback, and be sure to watch the 2 related episodes to the right. If you want to support this platform or follow us on social media, visit the links in the description, and thanks for watching StreetTV.net.